There is a small book, barely 5,000 words long, that you could read in a single afternoon. It was written in ancient China around 2,500 years ago, and after the Bible, it is one of the most translated books in all of human history. It is called the Tao Te Ching, and here is the strange part. It opens by telling you that the most important thing inside it cannot actually be put into words at all. For a book that admits it cannot fully explain itself, it has guided millions of people toward a calmer and freer way of living. This video is a gentle guide to the Tao Te Ching, explained in the simplest words I can find, and to the handful of ideas inside it that can change how you live. The book is said to have been written by Lao Tzu, an old thinker in ancient China who had grown tired of the noise and greed of the world around him. He left behind these 81 short chapters, and then he disappeared from history. What he left us is not a set of strict rules and not a list of commandments. It is more like a collection of gentle, pointing fingers, each one turning your attention toward a more natural way of living. So let us walk through what this little book is actually trying to say. The first thing to understand is what this word Tao even means, because the whole book circles around it. The very first lines of the Tao Te Ching say that the Tao that can be spoken is not the true and lasting Tao, and the name that can be named is not the true and lasting name. At first, this sounds like a riddle meant to confuse you, but Lao Tzu was pointing at something real. The Tao is his word for the way of nature, the deep current that everything flows along, the source that all things rise out of and return to. It is the reason the seasons turn, the rivers run downhill, and the grass grows without anyone telling it to. And his point is simple. Something this vast can never be fully captured in words, in the same way you cannot hold the ocean in your hands. You can feel the Tao, you can live close to it, and you can move in harmony with it, but the moment you try to pin it down with a neat definition, you have already lost the living thing itself. So, Lao Tzu does not really ask you to understand the Tao with your mind. He asks you to feel it the way you feel the wind without ever needing to see it. The second idea is one of the most beautiful in the whole book, and it is about the hidden usefulness of empty space. We spend our whole lives valuing things that are solid and full, and we treat empty space as worthless, as something to be filled as quickly as possible. Lao Tzu saw it the other way around. He pointed out that we join many spokes of wood together to make a wheel, yet it is the empty hole at the very center that lets the wheel turn. He said that we shape clay into a pot, yet it is the hollow space inside that lets the pot hold water and actually be of use. And he said that we build a room with walls and doors and windows, yet it is the empty space within those walls that makes the room a place you can live in. In each case, the part you can see and touch gives the thing its shape, but the empty part is what makes it useful at all. My grandfather Daiki seemed to understand this in his bones. In his small house in Nagoya, there was one room he loved more than any other, and it was almost completely bare. There was a single mat on the floor, one low table, and a small window that looked out onto the garden. Visitors sometimes wondered why he did not fill such a fine room with furniture and beautiful things the way most people would. But Daiki said it was the emptiness that he treasured. He told me that a room with nothing in it leaves room for everything, for a clear mind, for a long breath, for the light to fall across the floor in the late afternoon. He would sit in that bare little room for hours, and it was the most peaceful place I have ever known. He had built into his home the very thing Lao Tzu was pointing at, the gentle power of leaving space empty on purpose. Our lives work in exactly the same way. We cram our days so full that there is no room left to breathe. We fill every hour with tasks, every silence with noise, every empty moment with our phones. And then we wonder why we feel so tired and so crowded inside. The Tao Te Ching gently reminds us that the empty spaces are not wasted. The pause between two tasks, the silence in a conversation, the morning hour when nothing is planned, these open spaces are what make the rest of life usable. A day with no empty space in it is like a cup already full to the brim. Nothing more can be poured in, and nothing can move. The third idea is that opposites are not enemies. They depend on each other completely. We move through life chasing one half of every pair and running from the other. We want success and we fear failure. We want pleasure and we flee from pain. We want to be seen as beautiful and we dread being seen as plain. Lao Tzu looked at this and saw something we usually miss. He wrote that when people decide some things are beautiful, other things become ugly in that very moment. And when people decide some things are good, other things become bad. He said that being and emptiness give birth to each other, that hard and easy depend on each other, and that high and low only exist because of one another. You cannot have one side of the pear without the other. A mountain is only high because there is a valley below it. A day of joy only feels like joy because you have known days of sorrow. This changes how you face the hard parts of life. We tend to treat difficulty as a mistake, as something that should not be happening, as a sign that life has gone wrong. But Lao Tzu would say that the hard times are simply the other half of the good ones, woven into the same cloth, impossible to separate. The low points are part of what gives the high points their meaning. When you stop fighting the very existence of difficulty and accept that light and shadow always come together, a great deal of your suffering begins to soften. You no longer feel cheated when life turns hard. You understand that you are simply seeing the other face of the same thing you loved. The fourth idea brings everything home, and it is about where real strength lives. We spend an enormous amount of our energy trying to change the people and the world around us. We try to win arguments, to control how others see us, to make everyone behave the way we wish they would. Lao Tzu pointed in a completely different direction. He wrote that knowing other people is wisdom, and knowing yourself is a deeper wisdom still. And then he said something that has stayed with people for thousands of years. Having power over others is strength, while having power over yourself is the truest power of all. Think about how strange this is in our world. We admire the person who can command a room, who can bend others to their will, who can win and dominate. But Lao Tzu saw that the person who can master their own anger, who can sit with their own fear without running from it, who can keep their balance when everything around them is shaking, holds a far rarer and greater power. You cannot truly control the weather of the world, the opinions of others, or the way life unfolds. But you can slowly learn to govern your own reactions, your own desires, and your own restless mind. And the person who has done that quiet inner work cannot be easily thrown by anything the world does to them. That is the only kind of power that no one can ever take away from you. So we return to where we began, to a small book that opens by admitting it cannot fully explain itself. Now, perhaps that opening makes a little more sense. The Tao Te Ching was never meant to be understood the way you understand a map or a manual. It points you toward the way of nature and asks you to feel it. It shows you the hidden usefulness of empty space and asks you to leave room in your life to breathe. It reveals that every opposite needs its partner and asks you to stop fighting the hard half of life. And it teaches that the deepest strength is power over yourself and asks you to turn your attention inward, where real change has always lived. You do not need to read all 81 chapters to begin, and you do not need to grasp every line. The Tao Te Ching was never asking to be finished and understood. It was only ever asking to be lived, one ordinary day at a time, the way a river is not explained, but simply followed all the way down to the sea. Thank you for watching.